listening to Community Forum on KCCC 930 AM, sponsored by Eddy County, honoring God, country, and family, thriving with industry since 1889.
I'm Hattie, and I'm here with Jean Perminsky.
Hello.
Today we're going to talk about decluttering and self-care, because last time Jean was here, we talked a little bit about her decluttering business, and I was really interested in that, and it's a passion of mine, and so I wanted to have her come back and talk about it. But I'd like to do 1 minute about art first, because I saw that you were on the cover of the Carlsbad Current Argus.
Yeah, I have started a series about animals that I see around Carlsbad or that I've seen in New Mexico. So I've got 12 animals already made. I have a plan for over 50 total. I think the horned lizard, the horny toad, is next. I just saw one of those. I saw a beautiful owl last night, and I just love animals so much. So
you've chosen a great place to live for that. I'm always encountering strange things when we go hiking. So, about decluttering, you have a business in Seattle and here, Sparkle Home Organizing. It's Seattle Sparkle.
Exactly.
There, and Carlsbad Sparkle here.
Well, it's Sparkle Home Organizing, so my Instagram handle is Carlsbad Sparkle.
Okay.
Yeah.
What led you to transition from glass blowing and fine art to professional organizing?
So I went to grad school because I wanted to have my own business helping people transform their homes. I started off school in architecture originally when I was an undergrad, and I wanted to create healing homes for people. And I found glass blowing, got distracted by that, learned how to do it, kept doing it in grad school, and I absolutely love it. But through the course of moving and switching where I was living, I came across the idea that you could be a professional organizer. So I was doing all this stuff. I had moved from Providence to Washington down to Sonoma, California, and then I was trying to move back up to Seattle. And so I had just done a bunch of different moves, and I was visiting Seattle to just decide, okay, do I really want to move back or not? And two of my good friends were both having kids. They were nesting. They were about to have their first babies, and so they were rearranging their whole houses. I had just done all this work for myself to move and go through all my stuff, and I was about to do it again, and my friends were all inspired by it. And I was like, I think I could do this as a profession. And so I looked it up. I talked to a bunch of professional organizers in California, and they said, join NAPO. And I did. I went to a regional conference, and I was just like, these are my people. I continued to make art, but professional organizing is really fulfilling to me, because one of the things that was missing when I was making art was the connection with other people. As being a glassblower, you do work on a team with other people, and so you do have that connection. But when I was making art by myself, it was very solo, and I really wanted to make art that impacted people. And so when I started professional organizing, I realized that it was really therapeutic. It was almost like I was being sort of like a therapist in people's homes. I got to hear all their stories and look in their drawers, and with their permission, of course. But so it was a very intimate experience. I love all the weird, quirky things about people. Like when people go out to a restaurant or party or meeting or something, they usually kind of put on their best appearance or their best behavior. And then at home, you really get to see another layer of what someone's really like. And I just realized that I cherish that. Like, I just love all those quirky things about people. And so I found home organizing to kind of be an art form in itself, because there was the psychology behind talking to people, working through grief, motivating them, talking about where things would be best in their homes and how they wanted their home to really function, what was really true for them. And so that really felt like an art form to me. But I also make art that, in my mind, my intention is to reverberate good intentions back into the home, just like my intentions are with home organizing, but through art, it's with pictures and intentions.
How long do you generally work with somebody?
Okay, so that varies widely. And so when I don't have big organizing packages that I don't lock people into a real long time. My biggest is 3 hours. I have a 3-hour minimum for in-home, or 1 hour, or for a virtual, or even 15 minutes. Sometimes all it takes is that 15-minute consultation to get someone motivated, and then they feel like they can do it on their own, or they might feel like a layer of shame is peeled back and they feel more comfortable having family members or other people in their homes because they've let me view something over Zoom, which is that makes me so happy. Sometimes when I do go to people's houses, sometimes it's just 1 3-hour session. That's all they need. Maybe it's situational organizing where they just have a small project, like they've just moved or have a few small tweaks that they need to do, prepare for a baby, or something acute has happened or is about to happen. Sometimes it's chronic disorganization where they really do need layers of support, ongoing support. So it really varies. I've had clients that I've worked with for years up in Seattle. Now I might support them virtually, or they might be working with Sarah, who is my very good friend, and actually one of the friends that was up in Seattle when I went back. She was having her first kid, and she was one of my friends that inspired me to start the business in the first place.
I too find much joy in connecting and helping people.
Yeah.
You mentioned the shame. How do you help your clients overcome the isolation or shame or regret that often comes with our clutter?
Listening to them and normalizing it and showing empathy. It is something that sometimes people have experienced a lot of shame from parents or friends, or it's just shame that they've put upon themselves for whatever reason. They're just naturally hard on themselves. Usually it comes from another experience of hearing that voice and getting that implanted. So I like to use a lot of positive reinforcement and try to encourage them when it's appropriate to get out of the house and socialize and maybe have a friend over or go to another friend's house and see. Not everyone's house looks like it should be in Real Simple magazine. So
only my mother's.
Yeah.
Which is, I think is really interesting. And I'm going to connect to that in that I have not been diagnosed with ADHD, though if you do the quizzes, I have many signs. They suggest that I might have 2 different types. You mentioned on your website that you have ADHD and Hashimoto's. And that makes you very sensitive to your environment. How has your personal experience shaped the way you help your clients?
Yeah, so that's a good segue because that's another thing. I don't personally like to have my house like a Real Simple version. I am an artist. I like to make messes. I have 3 dogs. I'm very productive. I like to get stuff done. And so I like to say to people, it's okay if your bed's not made. It's okay if you've got a pile over here because you're doing stuff. I think some people get so afraid to make art because it's going to make a mess and then they don't want to have anybody over. So I like to talk about how I can really make a real good mess, and then at some point, when it gets to be too much, I will have to stop and put everything back. So I like to be able to identify with people with the messes, the timers, the time management issues. I like to talk to people about how I'm not perfect either.
That's great. I think that's really important. Especially when you're a professional at something, people assume that as a subject matter expert, you're going to be the best at it. And so I think it's really important that you're genuine about the fact that you make messes. I feel like there's a real emotional toll to living with clutter. But I think more than just a tidy space is really ultimately necessary to kind of overcome that feeling. So an example, I freaked out. Last year, we were in my 3rd year of a 3-year script writing program, and I was doing my 20 hours a week of volunteer work on top of it and homeschooling my kid. And so everything was a mess, everything. And so like I had this like freak out. And when we got home from our summer vacation and I walked into the messy house and I just like lost it. Then decided that I had to fix it. So I listen or watch I really listen while I do other things to women on YouTube. One of them is Cass from Clutterbug. And I was listening to one of her podcasts. She used to be like a super slob and now she is Miss Tidy. And she's like, it's really easy to go from one to the other. You just have to get rid of half of everything you own. And I was like, well, I can do that. I felt like freed somehow because they gave me this benchmark. So I just started getting rid of half of everything. Sometimes it was literal. I have 4 whisks. Now I have 2, and then other times it's like, well, if I'm going to keep this hobby, I have to get rid of another hobby,
Yeah.
And that was an emotional toll as well.
Yeah.
Even though it was for me.
Yes.
How do you help people deal with that part where it's regret for doing a good thing for themselves?
Ooh, that's a really good question. And congratulations for even attempting to do that, because there's a lot of people that would hear that advice, I think, and be like, okay, that works for her, but that doesn't work for me. So there's so many emotions that are tied up with clutter. And I think that people often want a list of rules, like, okay, if I haven't used it in a year, just get rid of it. And they just think they should follow this rule book. But it's not that. There's so much grief that goes along with letting go of things that it's important to nourish those emotions as you go. And so there's lots of different ways to do it. Some people need to eat more vegetables, for example, or take more vitamins just to help nourish their cells, really literally. Drinking more water, get more sleep, or switching another activity. But sometimes you need to just eat some junk food or stay up late scrolling on your phone because that's self-soothing. And so it's choosing those short-term self-soothing methods and using them in addition to the longer-term healing that's going to help really move those emotions through the body. So I love EFT tapping. It's emotional freedom technique. I've also done hypnotherapy. That's something that I think is really, really effective. So I will use hypnotherapy on myself, and I've also been trained to help other people with it too. I did a hypnotherapy certification and I just specialize in helping people with clutter. I don't do smoking or any other phobias or anything. I just do clutter. I've got other people I can send people to for that. So that's something that I think can really get into the unconscious and help process all of that grief that's gone on. Moving your body really physically. I was just doing a training and the teacher was talking about limiting beliefs. And I'm like, how do you, once you realize what your limiting beliefs, how do you move through them? She's like, one is getting awareness of what they are and then processing them, changing your beliefs to something, choosing a more positive belief to replace it with, but then physically moving your body and moving that energy out. There are little things that you can do to help build your confidence and build your trust in yourself that you will follow through. So I am much more a fan of going slow and steady and learning to only say that you'll do the things that you'll actually do rather than taking on a really big task and not doing it. And then your subconscious is just going to be like, hey, you said you were going to do it. So the next time you say you're going to do something, your unconscious, your ego, whatever you want to call it, is going to doubt you. And it's going to be harder because you don't have that integrity with yourself. It's going to be harder to follow through because you don't have that unconscious to back you up.
Oh, that was deep. Maybe it's just because I used to have a really big problem with that. There was a time where if I told anybody else that I was doing a thing, I immediately stopped doing it.
Yeah. Yep.
And it took a long time to kind of get through.
Yeah. So there is a really... Have you heard this book, The 4 Agreements by Gretchen Rubin?
Oh, no.
Okay. So she talks about how people follow through with their commitments. And there's the obliger, I don't know if I can remember them all, the questioner, there's someone, the rebel. Let me see. I don't know if there's one of them I'm forgetting. So there's people that are good at following through on things when they tell someone else because they can follow through for somebody else. But then there's also people that will not follow through if they tell someone else. And so it's really important to keep that quiet, like to know yourself and to maybe only tell yourself, and that's the person that you're following through with. I'm glad that you brought that up because it sometimes can be harder to tell other people.
It's funny too. I really like body doubling, which we haven't talked about, but so that listeners, that would be the process of doing things at the same time as somebody else. I do them online with people or even on the phone, talking to somebody while we're both working. I do a lot in my charity work. I do a lot of meetings where it's like two of us and we're working on our stuff and we're talking to each other about our stuff. I get more done that way, right? But yet, I was definitely the type of person where if I said, I'm going to commit to this fitness regimen, I could have been doing it for months, but as soon as I told other people about it, it fell apart, like every time. And so I definitely learned to just keep it to myself and just do it, you know, and then let people just be like, oh, look, what's going on with you? Like, this has changed. And then we can celebrate what I just did. But it has to be in the celebration phase, which I think is so weird because I get so much done when I work with other people.
Yeah, that's a really unique situation where you do work well with other people because there's some people that have to work alone, and that's kind of how I am. But you have to know, you personally know what you can tell your accountability partner and what you can't, and hopefully your accountability partner respects that and supports you on that.
Absolutely. So you mentioned earlier that you like to use some energetic things in your organizing work. Your website, I think, mentioned Reiki and energetic healing. Maybe it was your article. I don't remember. I read so much stuff. How does this spiritual element enhance the self-care benefits?
It's very interesting because when I was up in Seattle, there were a lot of people that were into energy healing. There's a huge naturopath school there, and so there's a lot of naturopathic doctors and alternative medicine, and it's very normal up there. And moving down to Carlsbad, it's not. I've maybe met a handful of people that even know what Reiki is, and any of that witchy type stuff is not really accepted, or people might be kind of curious about it, but they don't know anything about it. And so that's been something that's been interesting for me to think about as I've been living here. But so I realized that the spiritual element is really whatever you want it to be. It could be going to a traditional church, having a traditional organized religion and using that. So I work with a lot of very religious clients, and we love to call in the Virgin Mary and Jesus to help us, and that works really well. So I love to help people figure out how they can deepen their own spirituality. One of my very favorite places is La Sagrada Familia, Antoni Gaudi's church that has been in the process of being built since, I think, 1924 in Barcelona. And it is just the absolute most beautiful work of art. There's colored stained glass, there's patterns. It's very celestial, but it's also a Catholic church. And so I just love how he combines all that beautiful patterning and color, or how he had combined it because he passed away a long time ago. And so that's something that I love to have as an inspiration when I go to other people's houses. How can you bring in more of that universal energy, whatever that means to you, into your home?
Oh, I like that. Yeah. And I think that's really important, is that people are connecting with their spiritual center, as it were, not yours, through the process. As someone who is, and I'm quoting, struggled between wanting to make work that is both functional and decorative, yet doesn't add more clutter, how do you help clients choose what to keep? I imagine that you have to help people part with stuff as well.
Yeah.
And how do you help them make that decision?
One of the reasons why I was having a little bit of a struggle with art is because when you're learning to make things, or if you're experimenting with a new process, trying something new, which I recommend everybody do as an artist, you're going to make some junk that you don't like, and you've got to throw it out. It's going to add to the landfill. It's going to add to the recycling bin, whatever it is. It's money from your bank account that is now going into the trash for creativity's sake. And it's very hard to part with that stuff for a variety of reasons. One, because maybe you want to keep those ideas, you want to keep the learning, you want to keep the inspiration. So it could be a project that you've started and you think you might go back to it at some point. But it takes really tuning into your own knowing of what sparks joy for you. And that's a very Marie Kondo thing. So I love that she brought up the idea of self-attunement, like really knowing what your internal yes is and what your internal no is. Not looking to somebody else to tell you, but feeling it in your body and just having that knowing. And for so many people, myself included, it has been trained out of us. No, you should follow these rules. You should do these things that you're being taught. And it's not about that. It's the only person that really knows is you.
I thought it was really funny when you said sparks joy and brought Marie Kondo in, because that's where I started my decluttering journey, but it did not really work at all for me. It worked a little. But the whole piling of categories did not work for me. And maybe it's because I had a 3-year-old running around the house at the time. But it did use the Sparks Joy mindset, which helped with my first year of decluttering. And decluttering for me has been a multi-year process. And I know people can do it quickly, and I just can't. I don't have a lot of time, but when I do, I make sure that I have like a 15-minute declutter in a room, or if I'm putting away the dishes, I'm like, do I still like love this thing, or can I get rid of it? And I have this, a quarter of our garage is like preparing for the yard sale because I brought so much extra stuff. And our house is only 3 square feet different from the last house. And yet all of this stuff, and I brought less stuff, all of this stuff would not fit in the new house in a way that made me happy. I wanted to have some blank wall between furniture. You know, I didn't want it all like packed up together and stuff.
Yeah.
But I love the Sparks Joy idea. It helped me get rid of something that I had been carrying around for years. I had something from a traumatic past that I nonetheless carried around with me 35 years. And I pulled it out of the drawer that it was in, and I was like, does this spark joy? And I'm like, no, because I'm crying. Like, why am I keeping this? I was able to finally get rid of it, even though I had been moving it around the country with me all of this time. Like, I couldn't even wear it anymore. It was like this weird decorative thing, but I still carried it. It was so freeing. I put it in the trash. You know, and then I kept looking at the trash can, but I knew that my husband would come through and he would just empty the trash, and then it would be gone, and I wouldn't have to think about it anymore until today. But now I can think about it in a happy way because I freed myself from that thing. I think that's such a big part of the self-care part of decluttering, and such a huge benefit that people don't realize they'll have. There's so much of a mental and emotional load that left the house with the trash that day.
Oh, yes. I agree 100%. And it's so freeing to be able to give yourself the option to make those choices. And when you have something like that, if you're not quite ready to get rid of it, sometimes you might forget that it's in a corner or in a particular room or something, but unconsciously you're going to avoid it and might even add more clutter on top of it. So many, many times I have helped people declutter, and there's maybe one area of their home that's more cluttered than others, and usually there's something in there that is a deep emotional attachment that is really difficult, and so it's accumulated a lot of clutter. I know people that won't even go to parts of their houses. They don't really know, oh, I'm not going to that part of the house because it has this sock in it from 1984, but deep down they know, and they might abandon all kinds of hobbies and other things just to avoid having to deal with that sock from 1984.
power of the mind is crazy sometimes. But it's a self-protection mechanism ultimately that causes you to avoid that corner of the room or that drawer or whatever.
Yeah, your body and your mind are always doing the best that it can. And so sometimes picking up smoking or other habits are really your body's way of keeping you from doing something even more dangerous or harmful to your health. So once you know how to cope with those emotions, then you're going to feel ready to deal with it, and you might just find yourself in that room dealing with it. So did you find that was it the Marie Kondo book that inspired you to finally let go of that item, or was there something else that you learned to be able to cope with emotions so that you felt like you had the strength to deal with it?
There probably was a little bit of that as well. It was right before the great staying at home, and I was super busy all the time, and I was getting really stressed out. I had a small one on top of everything, and so I started therapy, and it was the first time I had really talked about that stuff in a long time, and so that could have been part of it too, is that I had opened the door, but then it still took like 2 years to get rid of it.
Yeah, and it's so important not to rush it.
I agree. I think that, we need to be kind to ourselves during this whole process. It means a lot. We worked hard hours to buy those things that we now don't use at all. Or we have things that are sentimental to our family but might bring us pain.
Yeah.
And then, in that case, I say just give it to the family and get rid of yourself of pain. I'm wondering, before we wrap up, what the most transformative change you've witnessed in a client's life through decluttering.
I have a client in Seattle who's absolutely dear, and I probably worked with her more than anybody. And she had lived in her walk-up condo since the 80s. I can't remember exactly what year, but a long time. She is very sentimental, very attached to that condo. The location was just perfect. So many good memories, so many things that are in the condo that were really meaningful to her. It was just a wonderful place to live, but the steps became a health hazard, a real challenge. And the condo association, there was really no way to put in an elevator for her. And so for health reasons, she had to move somewhere else. And so she still hung on to the condo, hasn't sold it yet, but I helped her get into an apartment that was in an even better part of town, where she was able to take an elevator up to her apartment, and there was very safe parking lot where she could put her car, walk to the grocery store, walk to some of her favorite shops, and meet up with friends. It just made her life more convenient and more social. The building had social events, and so it got her out of the house a little bit more. So not only was she living in a safer place, but she also had more social outlets too.
Oh, that can make a huge difference in someone's life. She's still holding on to the condo though.
She will sell it when she's ready.
Yeah.
And I think it'll be soon.
Great to close on, actually, is just how important it is to do this in your own time and not to put too much pressure on yourself. I spent like a year decluttering for a hypothetical move, but it was after the freak out. And I was like trying to figure it out. I needed a motivator. It was before I heard Cass and her 50% thing, which was a great help when I kind of plateaued. I've moved all over the country, and I've driven my stuff in moving vans. And so it's like, is this thing worth moving? Became my question. And that really helped me for like a year. I would start to like beat myself up because it was taking so long. And then it was like, it'll take as long as it needs. The point is I'm doing the work.
Yes. And it's so great that you're able to catch yourself knowing that to be able to reframe that in your mind instead of being hard on yourself, but actually saying it's going to take as long as it takes. And I'm okay with that is so important.
Well, is there anything you'd like to tell our listeners before we part?
Thanks for listening. Good luck on your decluttering. Happy organizing. And I have started teaching classes over at the Senior Center on a pretty regular basis for home organizing. So if you're a Senior Center member, which you only have to be 40 to be, check out the schedule over there.
Fabulous. Thanks so much, Jean.
Yeah.
You're listening to Community Forum on KCCC 930 AM, sponsored by Eddy County, honoring God, country, and family, thriving with industry since 1889.